Look, she has drugs in her bag. The sharp voice cut through the quiet first-class cabin, tearing through the air filled with the familiar clatter of suitcases and the murmur of business travelers. Flight attendant Kara Blake stood up straight like a prosecutor in open court, holding up the small brown package as if it were irrefutable evidence, her eyes fixed with malice and determination on the only woman of color on the plane. Ava James, in a neat black suit, her hair pulled back, her tanned skin exuding experience, said nothing. No need. Because the moment Kara accused her, she understood. And at that very moment, the entire first-class cabin fell silent. The seats had not yet reclined when they were lifted. Phones were pulled out, recording every frame of an arrest in the open air. People's eyes did not ask what happened, but assumed she was the culprit. Minutes later, as airport security officers boarded the plane, ushering Ava between rows of passengers still filming as if they were watching a thrilling episode of reality TV, Kara Blake flashed a triumphant smile. A brief smile, lasting only until Ava tilted her head slightly, leaned in closer, and whispered in her ear in a voice as soft as a breath but chillingly cold, "You have no idea what you've just done." Kara froze, not yet understanding what had just happened, not yet knowing that the moment she had fabricated a false accusation was the moment she had touched something she shouldn't have touched. She had no idea. The woman she had just humiliated in front of dozens of passengers was no ordinary person. Ava James is a high-ranking CIA agent who is on a top-secret mission on this flight. And Kara Blake, whether stewardess or accomplice, has just ruined not just a mission, but her own life. If you have ever been wrongly accused or witnessed someone being treated badly because of their race, you will watch every minute of this shocking story. Subscribe and comment where you are watching if you believe justice must always prevail, because what happens next is something you absolutely need to see. 12 hours ago. At the Langley Hotel, Ava James sat in front of an open laptop, the dim light from the screen illuminating her face, highlighting the wrinkles on her forehead, signs of fatigue from sleepless nights. At 38, Ava was no longer the young girl who was filled with excitement for glorious missions. She was the head of the CIA's Covert Aviation Security Division, a unit that monitors, protects, and prevents illegal activities in the aviation industry. And this time, her mission carried a greater responsibility than anything she had ever experienced. As she closed her laptop, Ava's eyes fell on a small photo frame next to her, a picture of her daughter, Layla, a 13-year-old with bright eyes and a bright smile. Ava had learned to control herself, not to let her emotions overwhelm her. She touched the frame lightly, gently rubbing the glass, then reached up to tighten her collar, suppressing a sigh. In that moment, a dark cloud passed through her mind. Her daughter, Layla, a smart girl, but also a victim of discrimination. Ava still cannot forget the contemptuous question that a classmate threw out when he saw Layla sitting in the first class on the flight with her. "Why is your mother sitting in the front row? People like your mother should sit in the back." The words cut deep into Ava's heart. Despite all her years of service to her country, she felt like a failure for not being able to protect her daughter from such emotional trauma. Layla, simply because she was black, had to endure such harsh words. Discrimination that no child should have to endure. Ava didn't take this job out of a sense of duty. She took it out of a deep anger. She wanted to clean up dirty industries where power was used to oppress the weak, where discrimination and racism were accepted as the norm. This wasn't just an investigation, it was her fight for a world her daughter wouldn't grow up in. As she stood up, dragging the suitcase across the room, her eyes flashed with determination. It wasn't just about the country, it was about Layla. She would protect her daughter at all costs, even if it meant confronting those in the highest positions. Ava walked through the airport exit, blending into the rush of people, but there was one difference. No one knew that she was not an ordinary passenger. Her eyes were sharp, like an invisible scanner, scanning every detail in this chaotic space. Each step she took seemed to have a purpose that only she understood. She did not let herself be swept away by the flow of the crowd, but instead, she observed meticulously and delicately, as if everything carried a message that only she could decipher. A maintenance worker with a fake badge looked around suspiciously. then pushed a cart into the luggage compartment. Two TSA agents were exchanging soft words, not about work, but about something unrelated to airport security. And not far away, a sloppily dressed passenger, showing signs of concealing items in his luggage. His eyes were confused, as if he was trying to hide some secret. Everything was in Ava's sights. She knew that this world was not just a normal flight, but also a complex web of conspiracies, people looking to exploit the lack of attention to commit illegal acts. She pulled out her phone and opened her social media app, elegantly, as one might do at an airport. But it was actually a piece of security software developed by the CIA, a tool for her to quickly record and report information. Scrolling through a few notifications, Ava tapped a few characters into the screen, reporting her initial findings. These were small details that could not be overlooked, because in her line of work, a single sign could be a clue that would lift the veil of criminal networks. Her goal today was clear. She wasn't here for a vacation or a business trip. She was tracking Kara Blake, a flight attendant who intelligence indicated was involved in a drug ring that flowed through commercial flights. With every step, Ava was more than just a quiet passenger in the crowd. She was a hunter, tracking every movement, every glance, every snap of her fingers, a heartbeat of the mission she was completing. And that, Ava knew, might lead her to a truth greater than anyone could have imagined. Kara Blake walked into the first-class cabin, her steps light and confident, as if she were walking the red carpet of an important event. 32 years old, beautiful, with golden hair and fair skin, Kara was not just an ordinary flight attendant. She had everything one could dream of: expensive watches, exquisite outfits, and a perfect smile, always plastered on her lips with a professional look down to the smallest detail. She was the epitome of success, the image others looked up to and wished they were like. But beneath the glitz and glamour was a struggling soul. Kara was battling not just the stress of her job, but an undercurrent in her own life. Credit card debt was piling up, and she was staying up late at night, not to pick up extra shifts, but to figure out how to make ends meet. The glitz and glamour couldn't hide the holes inside. And one of the things that hurt her most was seeing a black girl take over as head flight attendant, something she couldn't understand. Why not me? The question kept swirling in Kara's head, making her feel bitter every time she thought about it. But her resentment was not limited to jealousy. Kara felt like she lived in an unfair world. The world favors the undeserving, she told herself, looking around the luxurious first-class cabin. These people, the passengers relaxing in the spacious seats, might be the people she would serve, but inside, a simmering anger burned. She looked at them with indifference, sometimes contempt. Everything seemed so easy for them, and that only highlighted the difficulty Kara faced in life. She muttered, her lips moving. First class isn't what it used to be. That moment, though no one heard it, echoed in her head like a late confession, like an invisible complaint about all that she had been through. She no longer felt joy or satisfaction in the work she did. For Kara, first class was no longer the pinnacle of her career or a source of pride. It was only a painful reminder of the injustices she could not change, a world in which she felt she was always left behind. Ava boarded the plane like a calm traveler, each step steady. Although she had prepared herself for what might happen on this flight, her eyes couldn't help but scan every corner of the first-class cabin. She was used to the stress of work, but when faced with a new environment, a new task, she always kept her composure, not letting any detail go unnoticed. And her eyes quickly found the point of interest: Kara Blake. Kara, standing at the door, glanced at the passengers, but when she saw Ava, a strange and unfriendly feeling rose in her heart. The dark-skinned woman, dressed in a high-end suit, sat in the first-class seat. It was a brief glance, but enough for Kara to block out all active curiosity. A thought flashed through her mind. She didn't belong here. Kara couldn't help but feel a little suspicious, as if something was wrong, a strange connection that she couldn't explain. Even though Ava was just an ordinary passenger, Kara's eyes, from the first moment, had an invisible judgment. The feeling grew stronger. As Ava packed her bags, Kara couldn't help but glance at the luxurious handbag, examining every detail as if looking for a reason to be suspicious. Kara's eyes were sharp, like a detective on this flight. But she didn't know that she was looking at the person who could shatter every illusion she had maintained. Every action Ava took, no matter how small, was meticulously recorded by Kara, and then she let those thoughts take root in her heart. Ava noticed the look, the scrutiny. But she didn't care. Her eyes were cold, emotionless. When Kara stepped closer and deliberately avoided the polite question about how she didn't look like the most popular person, Ava just nodded, her eyes maintaining an unbreakable calm. Didn't look like the most popular person? The words were a mere breeze through Ava's mind, not stirring any emotion in her. To Ava, the judgment was nothing more than a sigh of life. A judgment and prejudice she was all too familiar with. In this first-class cabin, the tension gradually escalated, not because of the surrounding passengers, but because of the hidden confrontation between the two women, between a discreet coldness and an undisguised prejudice. Their eyes met for only a moment, but within them contained unspoken thoughts, thoughts that were never acknowledged. And in that tense atmosphere, a wordless story began, an inevitable battle of wits, although no one really realized what would happen next. The entire cabin fell silent, like a wave breaking apart. Kara suddenly shouted, her sharp voice cutting through the air, causing all eyes to turn to her. "Look! She has drugs in her bag," she shouted, her voice filled with anger and smugness. With a casual gesture, Kara held up a small package, a coincidental piece of evidence she had just found. The light from the overhead light illuminated the package, but no one knew that behind its appearance was a perfect arrangement. Kara had secretly hidden the package in Ava's bag, creating an elaborate trap that only she knew about. But no one but Kara knew that this action was not just a simple accusation, but the beginning of an undercurrent that would engulf everything. The surrounding passengers were stunned. Phones were immediately turned on, cameras started rolling. Every look from them, whether of concern or curiosity, was like a judgment. Ava, a woman sitting in first class, confident, but now she was put in a situation she had never imagined. No excuses could come, only silence, heavy and threatening. Security personnel rushed in, searched her bags, her pockets, as if those items had become undeniable evidence of a crime. The shame had overwhelmed Ava, but her expression remained cold, unwavering. Kara stood there, smug for a moment, watching the scene unfold as she had planned. She had succeeded, at least in the eyes of those around her. But as Ava was led away by security, her eyes never left Kara's. For a split second, Ava's cold gaze met Kara's arrogant gaze, and the air around them froze. Ava's steps were light but powerful, like a woman who has been humbled but never subdued. As she passed Kara, there was no sound, only a whisper that passed her lips, light as a breeze, yet heavy as a curse. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." And then Ava disappeared from Kara's sight, while the passengers were still eagerly recording every moment. The cameras continued to roll, recording everything. But did anyone realize that this was the moment when everything started to change? The interrogation room door closed softly, but the sound was like a deep echo, signaling the beginning of a difficult battle. Ava walked in, her gait straight and confident, as if she had been preparing for this moment for a long time. The CIA agents waiting in the room, their expressions did not change when they saw her, but their eyes were full of surprise, as if they could not believe what was happening. Ava did not need to say a word. She held out her CIA agent card, a powerful certificate, a strong affirmation of her true identity. As the agent's badge was placed on the table, the room fell silent. The agents exchanged glances, realizing the truth. This was no ordinary passenger. This was Ava James, the head of the CIA's Covert Aviation Security Division, the person they had never expected to be the main character in this investigation. The police officers stood up, their faces unable to hide their surprise and even a little confusion. But Ava didn't need their recognition. She just stared coldly at the screen that was playing back the flight video. The footage of every moment of Kara, every suspicious action, was clear, leaving no room for explanation. The flight camera was immediately recovered, and everything began to change. The official investigation began. Suddenly, the light in the interrogation room focused on Kara, the flight attendant Ava had observed. Kara was now being called in for questioning, while she could not have imagined that she would be the next one to face what she had done. The scene changed rapidly. From the beautiful, successful, and arrogant flight attendant, Kara was now just an exposed person. In an instant, everything Kara had hidden was exposed. A drug trafficking network that has been operating for over a year is slowly unraveling. The people behind the crime, who once believed they could avoid the eyes of justice, now face inevitable exposure. Kara, a cog in the chain, is now the hunted one, as the secrets of her and her accomplices begin to surface. With a cold look, Ava observed Kara without a word. She didn't need to prove anything more. It was all clear. The one who stood before justice had finally been revealed. Justice is never slow, though sometimes it takes time. Kara Blake stood in the dock, her hands cuffed, her eyes vacant. The courtroom lights illuminated her anxious face, as if what had happened on the flight had not yet hit her. But now the numbers and the inescapable truth forced her to face the consequences. 18 years in prison. Not for her beauty or the lies she had told, but for the crimes she had committed: smuggling, evidence tampering, and especially racism. The room was silent. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The complicit people in the drug trafficking ring, who had once considered themselves invisible, were now being brought to light. Each crime was pronounced, the sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The days in prison that no one could avoid. Kara looked down, her lips pressed together, but her heart couldn't stop pounding, as if each beat was a wake-up call. The proud woman on the plane was now a wreck left behind. All the harsh words and discrimination she had once heaped on others had now come back to bite her. Ava James had no mercy. She sat in the corner, her eyes cold and unwavering. She presented a detailed report of how Kara had exploited prejudice, using it as a tool to frame an innocent man, while she herself was responsible. Ava didn't say much, but every word she uttered was a strong affirmation. Justice will never be silent, no matter how sophisticated the plot. Justice has come, not through vengeance, but through truth. And Ava, though her mission is accomplished, can't help but think of her daughter. This case is not just a professional victory, but a poignant reminder of the right to respect, of never letting discrimination dictate anyone's life. Ava stood before her colleagues in the brightly lit CIA office, her voice low and steady, as if each word carried a great weight. We don't just catch bad guys, we disrupt the systems that make it easy for bad guys to happen, she said, her eyes focused on each of them, as if conveying a message deeper than any case she had ever solved. It was a lesson not only for the people in the room, but also for herself, a woman accustomed to fighting alone. But today she would not stand alone. As Ava finished her presentation, a handwritten letter arrived from a flight attendant from another airline. The letter was gentle, but strangely powerful. After your case, I started to notice things I didn't notice. I'm learning to speak up, even though it's hard. She smiled as she read the words, feeling like it was a small change, but it was also a big beginning. She wasn't just changing the way one person looked at things, but maybe a whole community, a generation of flight attendants. In the final scene, Ava walks out of her office, the light outside the window fading as dusk falls. She turns to head home, and as soon as the door opens, her daughter, Layla, rushes in, her little arms reaching out to hug her, feeling the love without words. Ava looks into her daughter's hopeful eyes and hands her a piece of drawing paper. "You're my hero," Layla says, her eyes shining. Ava smiled softly, looking at the little girl she had devoted her life to protecting. "No, baby," she said softly, her voice warm. "I'm just doing the right thing." And in that moment, Ava didn't need any more words. She knew that what she did wasn't for the title or the recognition. It was for the right thing, and that was what mattered most in life.